When you went to college, did you have good money management habits or were you a work in progress? We're going to talk a little bit today about how when your children are going off to college, it is a fantastic opportunity to really boost financial literacy as well as create some clear boundaries. But before I get into that, for those who don't know me, I'm Leah Hadley. I am the founder of Great Lakes Investment Management and Great Lakes Divorce Financial Solutions. And I help folks who are in the middle of life transitions, and aren't we all, to really navigate the financial decisions that go along with those transitions. But today we're specifically talking about the transition of kids going off to college. And I don't know about you, but I remember some very specific, challenging financial lessons that I had to learn when I went off to college. And I think the biggest one really was about credit cards and interest. I didn't have a lot of familiarity with credit cards before I went off to college. Don't know that we really talked a lot about, compounding interest and the high interest rates associated with credit card usage. I did hold a job when I was in college, which was certainly helpful in terms of income, but balancing and understanding how you can very easily get yourself into credit card debt was a tough lesson to learn. And so I think that is part of what inspired me to share this particular video today. But it's also because a lot of clients talk with me about some challenges that they experience as their kids are growing up and the lack of boundaries, I think, that have been created around some financial expenses and things just because there hasn't been clear communication. And so I wanted to address that as well. But this is a really good time whenever there is a change or a transition. It's a great time to reevaluate how we handle money, how we handle financial decisions, how we handle financial conversations, right? And that includes conversations with our children. Now, when you are going off to college and you're becoming financially independent in a lot of ways, right? It really is important to start having those conversations, to start understanding what is my role in managing my money, right? And that's going to be very different and unique for every family. And I want to make sure that that is very clear, that that is going to be a decision that you as a parent make, but also that you as a parent want to communicate to your young adult child, right? But that communication is really critical in creating clear expectations and boundaries. So start with really helping them to understand what the expectation is of them. Do you expect them to generate any income on their own, or will you be providing support for them? If you're providing support for them, what does that look like? Does it look like a deposit in a bank account? Does it look like providing them with a credit card? You want to be very clear on how you would be providing that support. Is there a combination of support and an expectation of them generating their own income? And if so, what does that look like? What is the expectation in terms of what the support is for? What can it be used for versus what you expect them to use their own income for? Basic budgeting skills can be tremendously helpful. And I work with lots of clients. Lots of people don't maintain and stick to a budget. But the concept is really important and helpful, especially when you are new to managing money on your own, new to having your own income, new to being responsible for your own expenses. To have things written down, documented, or in an app where it's very clear that this is what my plan for income is. This is what my known expenses are. And here's the thing, you may not know exactly what the expenses are. It may take a little bit of research. It may take a little bit of research in terms of speaking to the school where the child will be attending, doing a little research in terms of what the living expenses are in that area. It really depends on what kind of program they're attending. There are a variety of different things that are going to impact what their expenses are, what transportation is like in that area. There's all kinds of things that are going to impact what their expenses are. So they may need some help figuring out, well, how do I budget for expenses if I don't know what they are? And it may really take a little bit more research than you may have to do for your own budget, especially if you've been living in the same place and kind of having the same lifestyle for a while, right? But planning for that income, knowing, if your expenses are X and you need the income to cover those expenses, then this is how much you have to make. Really working through that budgeting exercise can be tremendously beneficial. But also in that conversation about budgeting, it's not just about spending, remember, it's also about saving. Emergencies happen all the time, unexpected things. If a student has a car on campus and they have a car repair that they need to deal with, or they have a health emergency, all kinds of things can happen, right? When income is coming in, want to get in the habit of putting a portion of that income into savings so they're prepared to handle unexpected expenses. Now, there's two buckets of savings, right? There's those emergency savings, those things that we can't plan for. And then there's those longer term savings, things we can plan for, right? Maybe they're planning a spring break vacation and they want to make sure that they have the funds set aside for that, helping them to understand that they can put a little bit aside from each paycheck in order to be able to save for that spring break trip can be really helpful in walking them through that exercise, right? The other piece that I mentioned before is really openly communicating about expectations. If you as a parent are providing support, what does that support look like? When is it being provided? How much is being provided? How is it being provided? What can it be used for? If there are things that it can't be used for, getting very clear around what that expectation looks like. If the young adult needs help, if they find themselves in a situation, can they reach out to you and ask for support? What does that conversation look like? How do you want that conversation to go? Preparing for these things in advance so that way they know how to approach these topics, but also it becomes conversation that you guys can have comfortably. And it doesn't have to be this very awkward, uncomfortable situation because you've prepared for it, right? You've set clear expectations and you know exactly how the family, as a family, you all have decided that you're going to handle these things going forward, right? But the other piece of that is, when does that level of support end? And you may not know that now, but if you know that it is temporary or it's a limited amount of time, communicating that. And what are the variables that are going to determine when it ends? Communicating that, right? So that way you all are on the same page and that young adult knows what they need to be doing to prepare to become completely financially independent, right? What about things like taxes? Who's going to be responsible for tax return preparation? Are you as the parent still going to be taking on that responsibility for your young adult, or is that something that they're going to become responsible for, right? Really talking through the specifics of financial management and being a good steward of your money and helping your child learn what that looks like. Now, I recognize that for a lot of folks, this isn't something that they've even done on their own for themselves and really proactively thought about, well, what does my budget look like, right? But you can be open and honest with your child about that and say, while this isn't something that I've done previously, right? I know how important it is. I wish maybe, and I hear that from people a lot, right? I wish I had saved more. I wish that I, knew how to manage my budget better, right? And that I want to help you develop better money management habits so that you are, you are more financially stable, right? That you don't end up with all this high interest rate debt. We wrote a blog post that's a little more extensive around this particular topic. Give some examples of things that we've seen from clients or clients' children that have been challenges that people have experienced, some of the pitfalls that are very common because these conversations haven't taken place, and things that can be completely avoided through education, through communication. So I will include a link to that blog post in the comments below. But I want to also just encourage you, if you have questions about this, reach out. Let's have a conversation. I think the more that we can talk openly about these financial topics, you become more comfortable talking with your children about them, setting what those clear expectations are, the boundaries that you want to have in place, but also giving them the confidence to really embrace their own financial independence.